Hi, good morning. I'd like to go ahead and call the Wednesday, June the 18th, Parks and Community Services Committee meeting to order. Thank you for everyone who's attending. First item on our agenda is approval of 3 different batches of minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I did not see any.
Betty or Anita,
No.
minutes are okay as presented?
Yes,
Yeah, I just need I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
I
Anyone
second.
want a second? Thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
Public comment. And
I got one, but
Mr. Neal.
there was a couple of discussions about the park courts and resurfacing that came up in budget meeting and council. So I'd like to just submit what I sent into budget committee a couple of weeks ago, and if you guys could circulate it or post it for the packet for next month, I'd appreciate it. The other one related to that is, our view is the tree roots aren't the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the puddles and pools and stuff and cracks. And a suggestion is Jason Menke's dad, who's living here a lot now, used to be the United States Tennis Association president for like 10 years.
What was his last name?
Menke. So he was in charge of everything in the Northwest, Washington, Idaho, Oregon. He's also in charge of the Beaverton, Tualatin Hills Park and Rec. So he has basically 100 courts that under their purview, and they're doing dozens of pickleball courts. So if there's somebody in town who knows stuff about cracks and puddles and whatever, he's probably a great resource.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Randy, did you submit this or could we get it electronically?
Sure. Who should I send it to?
To Sherry, please.
Okay.
And then we can get it into
Sounds
into a
good.
packet.
Take it, they'll remind me.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have anybody else who would like to make a public comment?
There's nobody online.
Okay, all right. Then we'll move ahead. Critical session items. First, AJ with the monthly state of the park.
All right, morning. I'll do the tennis courts last. So we got the soccer goals all put out. At the main park, I replaced the picnic table board.
Again,
Yep. And then one bleacher board, the 14-foot 2x10. And then we got the new pickleball nets installed and the old ones disposed of. The windscreens have been put up on the tennis court. That is on spruce. The flower baskets have been hung up, and then I've been working on mowing hedges, watering the baskets, and the other flowers and the trees that I've been planting throughout the year. And then the tennis courts have been pressure washed and cleaned. And then to your point, we're working on getting the spruce one resurfaced, the cracks filled, and everything leveled off. And then the other one that has the root problems, I was talking with our maintenance guy, and he was saying that he thinks a better idea, since pickleball is more popular, would be we redesign it, cut off 20-ish feet of where the roots are, don't disturb the roots, but maybe do maybe pavers in there, and so we can adjust them as the roots grow, take pavers out, make it a little bed, and then make that area like a pavilion that is around the roots, turn the court sideways and put 3 permanent pickleball nets there and just do away with the tennis court was his recommendation due to the size and then the spacing needed.
And that's the route from the shore pine there.
Yeah, from the shore pine that's in between that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's been proposed as a heritage.
Yeah, I
tree,
can see
and
why. Yeah, it's great.
The issues with the
Mhm.
proximity
I
to the
just
court
looked at it,
kind of
yeah.
kept it off our list.
Could
But
I make a quick comment on that?
Yeah.
You know, I think my view, and most of them, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other of either configuration. But if you turn them, you gotta fix the puddles, because then everything's in play. Whereas today, you know, with them being down the middle, none of the puddles really affect too much. So-
Right, so that whole thing would be completely redesigned, stretched, leveled, everything.
Yeah.
So
But
that would be a complete,
the
yeah.
puddles that are around all of the court
Mhm.
really need to be solved that way. Otherwise, pickleball people won't.
Yeah, that would be a complete redesign. Fence, part of the fence would have to come down and it would be a lot, but it is, yeah, we have been talking with him and getting his opinion, so we're working on that, but the main thing is the other court,
Yeah.
getting the cracks filled and it resurfaced.
I think, let's have a discussion, let's put this on the discussion item for next month when we're at
I
the
think so.
chamber. Cause then we can have a field trip after the meeting,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
go outside and look at it, okay?
Well, I'd like to hear some input from the tennis
Yeah.
crowd, you know, they would be effectively losing and I don't play tennis or pickleball, so I don't have any skin in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah,
Okay, well, let's put it on the
it's a discussion
agenda
item.
then.
And I could get more information
Yeah.
from Alex, maybe even if he's able to
Okay.
attend something or, you know,
Now, Alex,
Zoom. He's our, I don't know his last name, but he's our maintenance guy. He does a lot of
okay,
courts throughout the area and pickleball and tennis.
well, and
courts.
we've got some of the resources as well that if we,
And today would be a good
Feeling
day,
inclined.
because that's when the puddles are out there.
they probably will be visible.
And I got one thing, yesterday we had to, do some redesigning at the beach access at Orford. Come to find out, part of the beach access was on private property, so we got it off the private property, and I would encourage everybody to go look at it. We placed some, new stones, it's stone steps, so it's all natural, and it turned out really, really nice. So I encourage you guys to go look at the Orford beach access.
Will do. Speaking of beach access, just real quick, so the project to redo the ADA access down at Tolavana, is that still, is that still a project for this year? Or was it a project for
We're
this
gonna do
year?
the design, then we have to get funding for that project.
So, right,
Council gave us direction on what option they wanted to see us go after.
Oh, and I've been keeping that clear of sand and willows and everything,
And after,
encroaching it, so
after,
for now.
Sandcastle, we're gonna deploy the Moby mats at
Oh,
the
really?
access. So
and
we're
that'll
gonna
be at
go,
Tolavana.
correct. We're gonna deploy those sometime next week.
Yeah, I cleaned all the way to the end of that.
Yeah. I was there yesterday, so.
concrete, so.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments? Is that it, AJ?
Nope, yeah, that's it for me.
Any other comment as far as that goes?
Nope.
All right, so Mr. Bertolotti would like to
All right.
speak to us.
All right, thank you for giving me some time on your agenda. I've
Just tell me
spoken to this,
when you want me to share the screen, do you want me to share?
Karen had-
everything?
sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
In which,
Which one would you like me to share?
We'll start with the PDF on the, where it says ECRFR memo. I'm gonna start with that.
Of course, it couldn't be that easy. There we go.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yep.
So I'm gonna give you a little history lesson here first, just to kind of talk about, I don't know if all of you know the history of the Cola Creek Forest Reserve, but in 2009, the city passed resolution 0905 calling for a $4 million bond to purchase 800 acres of state forest land adjacent to the 240 acres then owned by the city along Cola Creek. This description of the bond measure was to purchase the land and have a management plan focused on conservation, restoration, and passive recreation. The bond measure passed on May 19, 2009, and through a complicated land swap the city was able to purchase the property from Weyerhaeuser. What I mean by a complicated land swap, the state can't sell land, so they had to work out a land swap with Weyerhaeuser to exchange land of equal value. The state got some land, Weyerhaeuser got the land in the Cola Creek Forest Reserve, and then was able to sell it to the city.
One correction to give proper credit
Yes,
was the cooperating landowner is actually Hampton affiliates.
was it?
So it was between the Oregon Department of Forestry and Hampton affiliates. So Weyerhaeuser was a neighbor at the time, and they had done some earlier smaller transactions, but not that larger one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Gotta give
Well, that's a
Hampton-
good consideration.
Yeah. It was a local business. We'll give them local credit. So.
Okay, all right. So the Cola Creek Forest Reserve Stewardship Plan was created after the city received the Oregon Water Enhancement Board grant of 1.4 million in April of 2012, creating a conservation easement on the land. The Cola Creek Forest Reserve Stewardship Advisory Committee was composed of 10 local citizens to agree on a stewardship plan. The stewardship plan was finalized and adopted by the city council in 2013. So I'm here to talk about trails. So, the original plan called for a loop trail with a Forest Service type bridge, possible additional trails to slowly be developed over a period of years. The original loop trail was constructed on an abandoned logging roadbed by Reinmar Bartel, the city manager, or the city planner, and Rich Mays, the city manager, and a couple of public works employees, probably Trevor being one of them, assisting with your vegetation removal. They actually spent a lot of time, both those guys spent a lot of time in the reserve, kind of looking around and, lead, and then led groups of the committee through the forest on hikes up through the logging roads. We forded down the North Fork and the West Fork and ended up back on private property behind the RV park. So those guys both were very instrumental in trying to see what was possible in the new property and the old property that the city owned. In subsequent years, signs were added, and there's a picture and we can get to those pictures after I read this, but so signs were added, a small footbridge was added over an unnamed tributary to the West Fork, and I believe that was done by the Public Works Department. Is that right, Trevor? The bridge, and in Mark Barnes' written comments to the 2018 stewardship plan update, he noted that the wood chips were not an adequate trail base, and the water was a problem on parts of the trail. Since 2018, no significant improvements have been made to loop trail, primarily from lack of funds and an attitude of limiting public access to use of the ECFR. The majority of the current spending in the Cola Creek Forest Reserve is to maintain fire access roads. I want to get to my point here. The main point is the city is now sitting on a surplus of funds from transit lodging taxes, the food tax, and other surplus funds. That number amounts to about $24 million. It's estimated that about $9 million is probably an adequate reserve. So there's $14 or $15 million out there that the city council is trying to prioritize in how it gets spent. And the Parks Committee now has an opportunity to request funds to complete the original loop trail, work on a master plan to accomplish the original goal of providing passive recreation opportunities for the residents and visitors of Canna Beach. There's a little bit more, Trevor, I think.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
We've already seen the pictures. You sent it to us, so we don't need to see them again.
You don't want me to read it?
Well, we've already read this, and I think we should just start our discussion.
Go ahead and finish for
Okay.
for your
I
piece.
am
and-
proposing the Parks Committee ask for funding to finish draining the wet areas of the upper portion of the loop trail, add gravel to the trail between the Spring Road and the upper logging road, and to construct a simple Forest Service type bridge over the West Fork of Wacola Creek at the water treatment plant where the berm road ends. I am also proposing the Parks Committee request funds to develop a master plan for additional trails that connect to the original loop trail. The Wacola Creek Forest Reserve is a valuable asset owned by the city of Cannon Beach. It was purchased with bonds approved by the voters of Cannon Beach, and we should now honor the language of the bond proposal by making passive recreation available to all residents of Cannon Beach. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to, Trevor, go to the, I'm not sure the footbridge, we can look at the footbridge. It's just a picture of the footbridge. Was constructed over there's a small tributary that flows through the trail and down into the West Fork. Okay, we can go to the, go to the one that says trails. I think it's the one that says trails. That's just the signage where we start down at the Spring Road. I believe that's the sign at the Spring Road.
I think that's from the upper
Is
portion.
that the upper one?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the sign. Anyway, the signs that were added, no bikes allowed, no horses, hiking only. And I'm not sure where the old road grade is. I'm not sure where that picture was taken, but that's pretty typical.
Yeah, it
That
could
is
be one
lower.
of a number of different roads. Looks very similar to the one we took crossing over to the North Fork 2 years ago.
So go to the one where it says on the far left, that one. See if that gives us the loop trail.
Yeah.
So, okay, so can I get up and point to the map a little bit? So.
Yeah, since Anita and the folks online won't be able to see you, you might describe what you're pointing at.
Right,
as well.
so the loop trail, can you move that up a little bit, Trevor? So the loop trail. I don't think this is the, oh yeah, okay. So here's the loop trail as it is right now. Here's the water treatment plant. Here's the Spring Road and the gate that goes up to the springs. And we have built a bridge right here, right now. That's the bridge the city built. This area of the trail is wet. This upper area is got drainage problems, and that needs to be fixed, and it needs to have gravel. I don't know the lower part needs so much gravel, but the top part needs gravel for a base. And then it connects to this logging road that goes down to the berm, and then would come across the West Fork at where there's now a ford. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about expanding anything beyond the original loop trail. Maybe we have a master plan that calls for something for that in the future, but I would like to see the current loop trail improved to where it's usable, it's friendly, you don't have to ford the creek, and you can walk in that upper portion without getting wet. And if you've ever hiked very much and you have wet shoes and wet boots and wet socks, it's not a lot of fun. So the ford kind of ruins the experience at this point.
Now, and the ford is crossing the West Fork right there by the,
Right
Right
below,
station.
yeah, where you come off the berm and right below the water treatment plant.
wanted to make sure that we
might be able to
clear
share
on
it
that.
online.
What's that?
The cursor would show Betty and Anita. Can you see the cursor?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, that's a good idea. I hadn't even,
Yeah, that's great.
So that yellow area, but
The
at the
yellow
top-
area is the trail that's restricted to foot use only. All the rest of the trail and the roads are open to hiking, horses and bikes, that's my understanding. Because they're old logging roads and they're hard surfaced.
So just so I understand correctly, you're proposing improvements to the yellow route, which was what, I
Yeah,
think
the
you see the
yellow,
map.
right,
And then the major part of that is construction of a new footbridge crossing on the West Fork.
right. So and I'm talking about something simple like the Forest Service type bridge. If you look at the parks master plan from 2017, Dan Grassick was the public works director at the time. That proposal in the parks master plan actually calls for a bridge that would carry vehicles. I'm not proposing that. I don't think a bridge has to carry vehicles. I think a simple pedestrian bridge is all that's needed there. But you guys are the one who kind of control the ask. There's lots of money available, and I'd like to see you, start an action plan to get that trail into a better condition than it is now.
So I know that I know that several of the committee members wanted to, kind of discuss this in more detail, and I don't want to take too much of our time because we've got a pretty busy schedule. So
Mhm.
we may need to reconvene to have a more detailed discussion, but
Mhm.
I'll kind of start off with simply,
Can I stop sharing the screen? Are we done looking at this?
That's fine.
I think so.
I'll stop sharing.
Our understanding of the 2018 ECFR management plan update really changed the focus. It came out, it was very much about limiting human occupation, not putting any more bridges, not doing anything that would encourage people to get off of the existing road. And in fact, there's even conversation about leaving, tree trunks as they've fallen over the existing trail to make sure nobody could ride bikes and stuff in through there. So again, I wasn't exactly here at the time, but that was kind of the tone that when we all became part of the Parks Committee that we were given to work with. And so I've got some concerns about how to balance what you're proposing versus what we thought we were given to work with. The things that we tended to want to focus on were the ecological stuff. Reintroducing beaver to the watershed, the salmon studies that are ongoing, the cedars that were planted 5 or more than that years ago need the cages removed. And I know we were kind of trying. So we've been focused on that stuff. What I really would like is probably a broader discussion of, has the appetite for what we need to do with ECFR changed from the 2018 timeframe? Because I think you had told us you were part of the original group, but I don't feel like that you were as part of it when the prior Parks Committee did their
I have not been
look at it.
involved in
Yeah,
this.
so we just need to get all that stuff together. I think that it's important to maybe to go back and get sufficient public input across the board just to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the whole community. Betty, did you want to? Oh, and Karen has her hand up as well.
Karen, you can go first.
Go ahead, Karen.
I just want to remind you guys, I know we've had some player changes since the stewardship committee looked at the entire stewardship plan cover to cover. They spent an extensive amount of time doing that. And during that discussion, the Paradise Fire happened, as well as some Southern Oregon fires that really got everybody's attention here in the state. And that is what generated the discussion with our emergency manager and the stewardship committee to consider reestablishing the fire road so that we could have a defensive position within the reserve to try to extinguish a fire. Because during that time, we also had a fire start in the reserve. This has been something that hasn't happened here in decades. And so it really got the committee reconsidering encouraging any greater public use of it and really focus more on the protection of it. And there was also a discussion around increasing the watershed footprint, which is a master plan project. And so those discussions happened during the time the stewardship committee was going cover to cover with the plan. And it focused on those two things, getting the fire roads reestablished, establishing a good, safe, defensive position to be able to extinguish a fire, and then preventing a fire from jumping the highway coming into town, and the real protection of that area. That's where discussion was around signage, educational about the locals when they do come in, remind them, what kind of behavior that we want to see if they're going to come into that area. But it wasn't meant to generate any greater public use of it from people that are not local here. Because the fires that were experienced in the state and even in the other states were human caused. So I just kind of want to refresh everybody's mindset on that, because I know we've had some player changes. And you're right, Richard, from the original focus to what the focus is today has slightly changed because of those new threats to protected areas like this. That's not unique to us. We're seeing it in other states. So there has been a bit of a shift from the original plan and desire of what they would have originally used that area for.
Yeah, Karen, and I've gone back and tried to read through the minutes from those discussions, and, I know there was input from the city attorney at the time, talking about the risk to the city if someone were to get hurt out there. We really don't have a plan on how to police it or even oversee it. There were a number of issues that they considered back in 2018. I don't think they should prevent us from doing the right thing. But I do think, Richard, that at least I had a kind of a different vision than what you did, and I think we can find a good compromise, but we're not sure yet. Betty?
Karen just sort of said what I was thinking, because when I got on the committee, which was 2020, the only thing we talked about was preventing human contact because of the dangers that have been going on in the state, the big fire in 2019. And so my whole time that I've been on the committee, which is almost 5 years now, we've been focusing on restoring the beaver, taking out the invasives, working on ways to clean it up and make it more natural. So bringing up this building a bridge and all that is kind of like, whoa, that's not what we've been doing for 5 years. So it's kind of out of the past. I understand, but it's sort of like, oh, that's not what we're doing. So that's why you're getting a little pushback, I think.
Well, and I understand the pushback. I don't have any problem with that. But I think there's two things you have to keep in mind. One is that we participate with the state of Oregon in the firefighting, and they protect our forest area, and they actually close down our forest when the conditions are bad, and they put a sign on our gate, and they prevent us from allowing any public access during high fire danger. So that's number one. Number two, the cat's kind of out of the bag, because the Oregonian, Jamie Hale at the Oregonian, who's their outdoor writer, and there's a group called, I think it's called Hiking Oregon, or made a copy of it here. It's OregonHikers.org. Both have extensive articles about the Ecola Creek Forest Reserve and the hiking that's available up there. So there is public knowledge outside of the city. I don't want to encourage that necessarily. I think should be more for people who live here and have knowledge of the area. I really enjoy. I walked today to get here. I live on Monroe Street. I walked down the spruce forest. I mean, it's wonderful to walk through that treed area with an improved trail. And the only problem is you can hear the highway, you can hear cars, you hear things from within the city. When you're up in the Ecola Creek Forest Reserve, the only thing you hear is water running, and maybe a bird now and then, or a deer scampering off. That's it. So I think it's important for us to we have to weigh the fire danger, and we have to weigh the attitude that we want to keep as many people out of there as possible. But I don't think you can keep everybody out is the problem.
Yeah. And I think we can do that. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, from the OWEB grant, we look back to that, there were 4 broad categories, objectives, and then the 4th is public enjoyment, and so we just need to strike that balance.
Yeah, we don't
and maybe there's a way that we can do that would not increase our sense of risk, but would still make sense from, a user standpoint. I was actually kind of afraid that what you wanted were spruce forest type trails, and that I'm hearing that's not really what you're asking for.
I mean, like the forest trail up here.
I love that trail, but
No,
that would be.
it doesn't have to be that wide.
That would be.
It just needs to be improved in the wet area. No, I think that probably the issue is with the city has never consulted with anybody on trail construction. And I talked to Karen about this, and she says, it's not something that's easy for the city public works people to do, to get equipment, small equipment in there and, construct the trail. But there are people who do that. There are people who contract with the Forest Service. And that's, I think, where we would start, and where I would
So,
start.
and of
Anyway.
course, that plays right into your proposal. That takes money. We should be talking about it. And if that's a project that we want to support, then
Yeah,
right? I mean,
but there is a lot of money out there, and you guys ought to get your hand out there.
I will say that's been a big change this
Oh,
year.
yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
I know Karen's got her hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Since this was a public meeting, I just wanted to correct something that was said. Public Works is the one that puts the signs on the reserve when it's closed. And we do that as a team effort. The forestry issues the alert that there's areas being restricted relative to fire conditions. But we work with our adjoining neighbor, which is now Nuveen, the timber company, because our properties butt up against each other. And we typically close at the same time. But we work with the fire department when doing it, the forestry, each other as neighbors, and we get the approval from the city manager before the signs go up. So there's quite a process behind closing the reserve and making that announcement, but it's the city that puts the signs up, not the forestry.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Karen. I was gonna add it also, so. Real quick, because I'd like to think about this more and have a discussion at another future time, since it's a new topic for us today. But I'd say I'm generally in agreement with the Public Works Director and what I'm hearing from the other committee members. I'm a huge trail proponent. Whenever we travel anywhere, it's one of the main things we want to go and do. But I just think that area, before we would improve anything there, I think we want to look at that really close as far as it's the right location, both environmentally and proximity to town. Every human basically is an ignition source. The way I always looked at them as a forester. We know that statistically, most of the fires along the Coast Range are not started by lightning, they're started by people. That's even more over possibly people operating a piece of equipment. So I'd just kind of like to look at it more closely, but I'd be concerned about that. The other on West Fork, I know there's been engineering studies on that in the past, and there's a reason there's not a bridge where you propose to put a bridge now. And so we should review that information too. The approaches they would have to be built up so high to be able to get the bridge above the high flows of the year and pass debris underneath it, that it was just not feasible to do it. So.
I think there was actually a bridge. Historically, there was a bridge there. There was a logging, like a logging bridge.
Correct. Got washed out.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And with the beaver activity that we're going to be promoting downstream of that, we don't know what's going to happen to that, is the flow of that part of the Ecola Creek. Because,
Right.
The city's committed to doing that beaver project. We need to finish that project before we start and see how it's going to affect the natural area that, that exists today, in my opinion.
So Richard, it sounds like we could conceivably consider both, them as 2 separate proposals. One, the bridge, one improving the trail, at least to the degree of getting rid of the wet spots, and we can kind of start talking about those
Yeah,
All right.
and I would
How's that?
propose that, once the ECFR is open after October, we could do a field trip up there and
Yeah,
walk that
well, and I think
existing
that,
trail.
we should
See the
invest our
condition
time
of it.
into that.
Mhm.
And, let's plan on doing that. Once the ECFR is
Yeah.
open back up.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks for bringing it
Appreciate
to us. Yeah.
Let's see, the agenda showed a little bit, right-of-way trees. I think we had one
Correct.
proposal. Are there any questions concerning that? Concerns?
This is Jim, say.
Don't see anything, okay. Let's see, tree focus group, and that's the next one. Mine, the one I printed out is slightly different than what's online, and so I apologize for being a little confused in my deal. So right over, no, Parks Master Plan. So we had talked previously about, as a group, getting back into the reviewing the Parks Master Plan and trying to come up with I guess a list of things that we might consider proposing as works. I don't know if anybody's really got anything. I've been told that there's a proposal, in addition to Richard's proposals, there is someone has made a proposal for an additional trail in the spruce forest. But I don't know a lot of the details about it. So what I'd like to do today is simply inaugurate the group to take a look at what the Parks Master Plan envisions. Oh, the other one that's come up is some kind of a bypass trail around the S curves, and I don't know what that might look like either. But if we want to promote or pursue any of those, I think this is the right group to have that discussion. You disagree, Trevor?
No, I agree.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
We're talking that the Parks Master Plan has not been updated since 2017. That's the current plan, right?
That's
Okay, okay.
well, I know, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, one of the things I read through it actually the last couple of days. One of the things I noticed, there's a piece of property that the city owns called Inspiration Point.
Mm.
And, but it's not mentioned anywhere. I thought it was supposed to eventually be a park, some kind of a.
Not that I'm aware of.
Either.
Yeah.
Well, it was purchased about 20 to 25 years ago. There was a fundraiser. We all kicked in money and was purchased from the owners and given to the city. So what is the plan for it if it's not? I thought it was gonna be, there was gonna be some park benches and a viewpoint.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
So what's the long-term plan for it? If the city owns it, what's the,
Leave it natural. Inspiration Point. It's a beautiful area, but it's leave it natural.
how do you access it? How do people, I mean, I think the initial push when we bought it was gonna be a place where people could go visit and,
We have a right of way that goes, I think it's Mizina. Karen, what's the right of way that's adjacent to that?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that right now.
We have a
Isn't it-
50-foot right of way that's
isn't it right where
public
the-
access.
isn't it right next to the property that the big land use dispute is?
Correct,
Mhm.
Right.
correct.
Yes.
There's a right of way directly to the south of that, a 50-foot right of way that's public access.
And my
And
recollection was,
I just
Oh.
wanted to mention before you guys go too far on a trail relative to the S curves, please go back and look at the transportation plan. There is a section in there regarding that specific thing, so don't reinvent the wheel. They paid a lot of money to do that TSP. So go back and take a look at that, even if you want to modify it or make a suggestion relative to extrapolating that from the TSP and asking council to move forward on that project. That should be your starting point. Doesn't mean you can't modify it in some way once that project is vetted, but don't reinvent the wheel.
Thank you, Karen.
That's a good point. My recollection as a fairly close neighbor to that, and I know my wife and I got behind supporting it in a small way monetarily, was that it was going to be just left alone, that it was potentially, slightly unstable. There's been some of that work being done to measure the groundwater levels in there. And that the least, like almost a no touch in there was going to be the best thing for it, rather than have develop anything that could possibly trigger an event. So.
I think there's a lot of pieces like that I don't have any knowledge of, and maybe they're not widely known, but if we want as a group to pursue that, then we need to put some thought into how do we do it properly, right? Anyway, is there any other comments about potential parks master plan activities? Again, that'll be another one that I want to carry over to the next agenda. We need to look at it, but at a minimum, I'd like to ask the members of the committee to go back and reread the parks master plan
And look at the transportation plan.
and look at the transportation plan before we get together again. Okay. Tree focus group, I'll just give a short update because I'm a part of that small work group. We continue to meet. We met yesterday briefly. We do not have a scheduled time where we're going to bring our updated proposal to the city council. It won't be in July. July's already booked up. It'll be sometime later in the year. But that work continues to go, and if anybody's interested in getting involved in that or wants to pursue it, Richard, I know you've been helpful to us. Please reach out and let me know, and I'll be happy to let you know when our next small group meeting is. But monthly reserve cleanup, Betty. Come on up.
You're muted.
Yeah.
You're muted, Betty. There you
Okay,
go.
this week is going to be at the Ocola Creek Park, right next to the bridge, on the east side of the bridge. And we're going to be continuing to remove the invasives and getting ready to plant our pollinator garden there. So please come out. I know that Sandcastle's happening, but you can do two things at once. Let's do it. Okay, see you there.
Where is the pile gonna be placed, the debris
It's gonna
pile?
be right at the where the bench, right above where the bench is, right where we put it, AJ, where we put it last time. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, that's easily accessible with the tractor bucket. So.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted to thank Anita. She took it upon herself to weed the whole rose garden in front of the tennis courts. So.
Woohoo!
Amazing. Nobody's ever done that before. Nobody ever wanted to. They didn't want to crawl in there amongst all those thorns.
She's a guerrilla gardener.
I love it. Yes. That's
It's
what
really easy and something that,
her point that she earned is she's the guerrilla gardener.
well, thank you, but I will use that opportunity to bring up that perhaps the Parks Committee, and all of this, cutting out invasives, that since we are the Parks Committee, I feel like I took it upon myself to make our parks look good, and those tennis courts, it's the weeds come out really easy. And I think a small work party, I'm looking at the east-west side now and trying to figure out how to get in there, but we could probably get that out, especially if we had any Ecola Bible kids. Just as a matter of pride in our parks, the tennis courts, and community service. So it was my pleasure to help out. Thank you, Karen. And
Thank you, Anita.
yeah.
Thank you, Anita.
Good job. Next on our agenda real quick is community grants. I think you're all pretty well up to speed on where we finished that process. The recommendation was made to the city council about 2 weeks ago, I guess, and seemed to be well received. The final, it'll be presented to the council, the meeting July 2nd. I believe that's the right date for final approval. And then shortly thereafter, we should be able to send out letters to the parties that got grants. And hopefully the checks will be able to be made up and sent out as well pretty quick. Was there any comment, any conversation around how the community grants process went? Any pieces that we need to talk about? I felt like it went pretty well. Now, as you know, there were 2 applicants that did not get funded, and we don't probably need to go through that too much, but I'm very pleased to say that they had that when we passed those asks back to the city council via the budget committee meetings, that they seem to be sensitive to those needs, and that I know that they will both be discussed in the July council work session. So I have high hopes that we'll be able to find some way to help those 2 organizations out. That was the Cannon Beach Academy and then the Elk Creek Terrace Apartments. Correct. Any other thoughts? Okay. Last thing on our agenda then is 12 Days of Earth Day. I don't know that we're going to have a big discussion right now. There is in your packet a revised, a different form because we found out this year that we were using the incorrect form to make an application for the street fair and parade. So we will make that change in our 12 Days handbook. I haven't gotten any feedback from any of the other committee members yet as to other improvements that we need to make, but that's still a possibility. I imagine that maybe Betty will help me out a little bit, and we'll update the manual and present it back to this committee shortly.
Yes.
Betty, you want to talk a little bit about your idea? I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Well, Les and I, we've been working on the Parks Committee and since COVID, we've been building up the 12 days. I know it was big before, but we had to rebuild it. And what we found this year and last year, as we grow the program, we're thinking 12 days is really tricky to fill in that short period of time. And a lot of things are happening at once, and we feel like we're getting a little fatigue from the people that are, we make all these wonderful events, but they're so stacked up. People are doing, if they did every event, they'd be going out almost every night. So the thought would be we would on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we would have the 12, that we would call it the state Earth Day fair and events. And we would have threads, and we would have maybe an event Friday night. Saturday, we would have the fair and the beach cleanup, and Sunday we could have another event. But then we would have every month, we could have a speaker event or something like that. So it'd be 12 months of Earth days, 12 months, whatever. We don't know what we're going to call it, but it would be so much easier to do a concerted effort for the Earth Day area, have the tree plantings with the kids and all that, but all in one concentration. And then once a month, we could have an event which would highlight nonprofits or people in our community that are working toward our environment. We could have 1 month when we're doing beaver restoration. 1 month we could do help with the beach cleanups. I mean, there's so many things. It eases our time, and it expands our program without putting more stress on the people that are making this happen. That's my thought. And so we could think about it. I think 12 days was just a whim, and it's turning into something that's kind of difficult. And I don't see why we can't expand on it and make it less difficult, but make it even bigger. So just think about it, and let's talk about it some other time.
Karen, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to caution you about spreading it out through the whole year. I know a lot of areas spread it out over a month. You know, they call it Earth Day, but they over that whole 30 days, they have a smattering of events to kind of spread it out and celebrate it over the month. But to stretch it out over the year, I would really caution the group because I don't feel that we have the staff that can support you guys in this effort. And it does take Sherry's time, it takes Trevor's time, it takes our parks staff time. So I would really just ask you to step back on that and ask yourself if you could just spread it over the month. I think that would be reasonable and it would give you guys some relief. But we just need to be careful growing this too large. We have never done a city project that, lasted for this span of time and became that large. And we may find ourselves in a position where we're eventually having to reach out to a consultant to do this because we're not event coordinators. We're public works folks. And so we're really kind of stretching the boundaries of what we're able to do. So I would just say, consider just doing it over the month and keeping it within that confine. I couldn't support you guys doing it over the whole year. We'd have to have some sort of outside help because the staff is they're just not equipped to do it.
Oh, Karen, I wasn't thinking about, I was thinking more like when we had the talk at the, just evening talks. I wasn't thinking about big events. So I wasn't trying to add work to us. I was just saying, instead of having like the Haystack Rock talk on a Thursday, we would have it in July and we would have a talk in August with maybe the Bird Group, just having, we could have it at different venues that are already, for instance, the History Museum, they're always open to having, an evening event. So that's more like, I wasn't thinking about adding, making it huge. I was just thinking about simplifying it.
Yeah. And you can do talks like that anytime during the year. It doesn't necessarily have to be attached to our 12 days, which insinuates that you're doing 12 days across the whole year. But you can organize talks like that anytime. Just don't necessarily attach it to your 12 days event,
Yeah, yeah. So instead of
Think
thinking
about it,
12,
just ask you to be conservative about that.
if we think of it as 12 days for the whole year, but not the whole day, just an event, one event, and then the April one would be the more intensive. We would just do 3 days then.
Mhm.
So we could take December off, you know what I mean? We could 3 days in April and then a talk in every other one of the months. It would just, I mean, Mark worked and Anita worked for the events this year and we did a lot more than we have done before, but it puts a lot of stress on us because we have community grants at the same time.
Yes, yeah, it comes back to back and it's overwhelming.
Yeah,
I agree. I empathize with you guys, but I think it's okay to set parameters on what the 12 days of Earth celebration would look like.
yeah,
And then outside of that, you
yeah,
plan your rest of your calendar year for events that you want to plan talks and stuff, but you don't attach it to the Earth celebration. You say it's a talk to support our environment and
Yeah.
the love of our environment, and you organize. It doesn't have to be attached 12 days.
okay,
And you do it in the months that we don't have major events going on or big holidays, like say December and Thanksgiving. You're not gonna get a lot of turnout with
Right.
that sandcastle, and people are so focused on that. So look at your calendar year and see where it makes sense, but don't attach it to the 12 days. Make it a talk of its own to celebrate our environment. And then you guys put your parameter around what you can manage in the real, Earth Day celebration that the world is doing at the same time,
right, right.
Well, why don't we take the conversation and we'll give it some more thought about what we might consider. I hadn't considered trying to spread it to a 30-day, over the 30 days like Karen suggested. I'd like to maybe look at that and see what you think. But I think the one thing that hasn't been mentioned is we had very poor, I felt like, turnout to almost all of our events. Many times we had 5 or fewer people outside of, the Parks Committee who even came, and I think part of that is that saturation. And this year, there were big events on both weekends that fell within our 12 days, and we can't really control that. We shouldn't even try to control that, but it's a lot of effort, and if we can come up with a better way to reach more people, that's really what we want to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Anyway,
All right. Thank you, Betty. Good job.
Mhm.
Anyway, so that's the end of our agenda. Good of the order. Is there anything that anybody would like to share with us? Well, I'll just thank Anita for doing,
I have a comment similar to that last topic is, I know Hannah and Eric are doing pub talks over at the
Mhm.
Legion. The first one was somebody doing a dark astronomy stuff. The second person was doing something on the, the bird rehab or wildlife rehab center. So, partnering with them might be a good idea.
and I think that's what that's what we were envisioning, was being intentional, but partnering with people and not trying to, saturate the place with a bunch of things. But I hadn't even thought about Hannah and Eric. They very well could be amenable to that.
yes.
Anyway, good of the order. All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.